Hey, remember when Lord of the Rings came out? No, not that one.
That one. Yeah. Let's go back to 1978, y'all. Oh, yeah. Let's get funky.
That's right. We're going back to 1978 when lava lamps were still rocking, the disco was still a bumping, and the world was just a little bit simpler. Back in the times when cars were horrible, traffic was bad, the carpet was shag. 1978. It's one of those weird years in cinematic history. I thought we would go back and take a look at the movies of 1978. Yeah. Now, folks, for 1978, it was the year I was 6 years old, and that's really the time when you kind of start remembering things. Things get stuck in your head, things that you've seen, previews of movies that stick in your head, movies you haven't seen that you've just heard about, that the visions in your head no movie could ever live up to. 1978 is one of those years for me. So let's break it down. First up, we have The Deer Hunter. Now, this is one of those movies where, like I said, the visions in your head are much more vivid and much worse than anything they could ever put on the screen, because all of my cousins, and I've got many cousins, of course, being from Arkansas, all my cousins had seen this movie. I had not seen this movie, so they described this movie to me 100 times before I saw it. And the visions that they put in my head about this movie, had I had a $500 million budget at the time, I could not have produced this movie. But when I finally saw this movie, it was mind-blowing. The sentiment behind it was really awe-inspiring, and the thing is, in 1978 we were not that far removed from the Vietnam War, so I know this movie hit home with a lot of folks that had come back, and very hard to watch. And I can imagine in 1978, if you were a Vietnam vet watching this movie, how hard it would be. The Deer Hunter. Now, in the mid to late 70s, Burt Reynolds was in his prime, and he was frequently tagged up with Sally Field. And this is not a Smokey and the Bandit movie. This is Hooper. If you've not watched Hooper, Hooper is a movie about a movie. It is a movie about a stuntman making an epic movie. It is basically behind the scenes of Smokey and the Bandit. The whole premise of the movie is that Burt Reynolds is a legendary stuntman. His partner, who is played by Jan Michael Vincent, they have to make this epic run at the end of the movie, and they have a rocket-powered Trans Am. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. Check it out, Hooper. Now, hot off the heels of the success of Jaws, we got the horrible Jaws 2. Came out in 1978. It was just a complete letdown of a movie, but the whole Jaws craze and being afraid of the water spawned movies like Piranha and Barracuda. But there was another epic monster movie that came out in 1978. That's right, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. This little gem came out in 1978. It's considered one of the worst movies ever made, but also one of the greatest. If you've not checked out Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, take it for what it is. Take it for a fun ride, and you won't be disappointed. Now, of course, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was inspired by the Attack of the Killer Bees, which came out a little bit earlier. But in 1978, we got another Attack of the Killer Bees movie called The Swarm. And The Swarm was pretty cool. I do remember watching this on TV. It was the whole craze of killer bees coming up from South America and Mexico. Much like the murder hornets of today, they were going to wipe out all of the U.S. Check out The Swarm. It's quite the ensemble cast in this little disaster movie. Now, there were a few movies that were actually scary in 1978 that came out. The first one being, and this is another one of those movies that I'd heard about for a long time before I actually got to see it, because it was actually rated X when it first came out, and the only place you could see it was in the drive-ins, back when we had drive-in theaters. But of course I'm talking about the sequel to Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. This is where George Romero brings all the zombie gore to real life. He brings it in full color, and his masterful effects guy, one Mr. Tom Savini, who actually really inspired a lot of my artwork and a lot of the things that I do. Tom Savini's great effects guy, and I don't know if you've seen him lately. He's still like super cut. He's like 70 years old, super cut. But Dawn of the Dead, again, the visions that I finally saw on the movie screen, which were shocking, never seemed to really live up to the visions that had been put in my head by all my friends and family who had told me about this movie before I saw it. But still, it's a classic. You can't pass up the original Dawn of the Dead. This movie came out in 1978, though I didn't see it till later in life, probably 82-ish, when I was about 10. And even then, of course 10 years old, this movie scared the ever-loving crap out of me. I'm, of course, talking about John Carpenter's Halloween. Now, the whole slasher genre kind of started right here in the U.S., and Michael Myers is a terrifying figure, and of course, we all had crushes on Jamie Lee Curtis. But Halloween scared the ever-loving dog crap out of me. Now, in the 70s, Clint Eastwood was really popular. He was probably at the height of his popularity. I know he's been popular since the 60s all the way till today, but kind of in the 70s era, that's when he was really kind of at the height of his popularity, and we did not get a Western from Clint in 1978, but we did get one from Jack Nicholson, and this is a movie, Going South, that you need to check out. Super funny movie. Love Jack Nicholson in this movie, and if you keep your eyes peeled, you'll see about half of the cast from Back to the Future 3 in this movie. It also stars John Belushi, who is absolutely hilarious in this thing. The whole boiled chicken scene is crazy. It's awesome. Check out Going South. Now, Clint Eastwood did make an epic movie in 1978. And I know there was some controversy on the way that the orangutan in this movie was treated, but of course I'm talking about Every Which Way But Loose. This is the story of Philo Beddoe and his brother in an underground bear fist fighting circuit. It is an awesome, funny, hilarious movie. This is one of Clint Eastwood's best movies, and just like with the cast of Going South, if you keep your eyes peeled, you'll see most of the cast for almost every Clint Eastwood movie in this whole era of his movies. But check out Every Which Way But Loose. Super good movie. Now, when you're talking about the 1970s, you've got to bring up Bruce Lee and the whole Kung Fu era. I remember watching The Five Deadly Venoms with my brother on Kung Fu Theater. Watched that in the 80s. It came out in 1978. Five Deadly Venoms, one of the best Kung Fu movies to come out of that era. But the movie that made Bruce Lee kind of famous, his iconic look with the yellow jumpsuit and the black stripe, Game of Death. This is the movie he was working on, that he stopped production on to go do Enter the Dragon. Unfortunately, he died before completing this movie, so if you watch closely, there's a lot of scenes in Game of Death that are not Bruce Lee. They are a double. They did a really good job of putting it together, and it kind of has that creepy feel watching this, like watching The Crow with his son Brandon Lee, where they finished the film after he died. You can also catch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in there, in that giant ass footprint that he puts on Bruce's chest. Epic movie. Check it out. Game of Death. Now, long before there was the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the DC Cinematic Universe, we had Superman, the movie. Now, when this came out, it was mind-blowing, the effects at the time. It's pretty dated looking now, but we all dug Superman at this time. And at this time in the 70s, DC was much more popular than Marvel due to the Justice League cartoon, the Batman cartoon, the Batman TV show. And when Superman the movie came out, absolutely mind-blowing. They advertised it as you can, we'll make you believe a man can fly, and they kind of did. Now in the 70s, cars and trucks were a big thing. Super fast cars and big old semi-trucks. That was a thing. Smokey and the Bandit brought all that into the forefront. And I've got two movies. Like I said, there was no Smokey and the Bandit that came out that year. We got Hooper, but we also got Corvette Summer. Now, Corvette Summer stars Mark Hamill, fresh off of Star Wars. This was, I believe, his like second big movie star role, and maybe the only other kind of bigger movie that he did after Star Wars. And it also stars a young Annie Potts as Vanessa. Now this is the story of a young man who rebuilds a Corvette, gets it stolen, and he steals it back from the car thieves, and a super car chase ensues. It's a great movie. Check it out. It's goofy, it's stupid, it's completely unbelievable, but it is Corvette Summer, and you can go online and see that a lot of people have built that exact Corvette. So that was the fast car. We got to have the big rig, right? We got to have the big trucks, and this is where Chris Christopherson brings us Convoy. Now I'm not sure if the song inspired the movie or the movie inspired the song, but either way, we got this beloved tale of the legendary trucker Rubber Duck trying to make his way across the country, and when the police come down on him unjustly, him and his trucker buddies form the Convoy. Yeah. Now here's another movie that came out in 1978 that absolutely scared the crap out of me. Magic. If you've ever had a fear of ventriloquist dolls, do not, I repeat, do not watch this movie. Just fair warning, this is one of those movies I don't even like talking about it, so let's move on. Now, it will still be a year before we got Alien, but we had Invasion of the Body Snatchers, another alien tale. This is a classic story. It's been told over and over and over again, but this is the iconic classic version of this. There were versions before this, but the Donald Sutherland scream at the end where he's pointing at the camera with his mouth wide open after seeing a human-faced dog pass by. The effects in this movie were disturbing for the time. Very groundbreaking. Check it out. The Donald Sutherland 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now at the beginning of this video, I showed the little poster of the Lord of the Rings animated cartoon that came out in 1978. And this was a follow-up to The Hobbit, which these were both really classic cartoons of my time. These are the cartoons that introduced me to the whole J.R.R. Tolkien universe. This is the one, I believe I saw this one first before I saw The Hobbit, which is kind of weird, but I saw this, then I went back and watched The Hobbit, and then I got into the whole universe. But to enjoy Lord of the Rings, the animated version, you may need to have watched this next movie. We are, of course, talking about Cheech and Chong Up in Smoke. Now, I know in my top 9 movies of 1980, I talked about Cheech and Chong's next movie being my favorite Cheech and Chong movie. This is the classic Cheech and Chong. This was based on their stage routine. These are all the funny little stories and tales. They put them all together and made some kind of a coherent movie of some sorts. But this is classic Cheech and Chong. It doesn't get any better than this. I just happen to enjoy next movie a little bit more. But this is the classic 100% real Cheech and Chong. Up in smoke, it's where I want to be. Now, of course, 1978 was dominated by Superman. That was the biggest movie of the year by far. But there were a couple of comedy movies that were legendary that came out that year. The first of which being Animal House. Now, how can you talk about 1978 and not bring up Animal House? This practically made John Belushi a legend. He was already a big star from Saturday Night Live, but when Animal House came out, it took him to the moon. This cast was originally supposed to star his other Saturday Night Live co-stars, but they changed their mind and made this an ensemble cast. I talked about Kevin Bacon in Friday the 13th in my last video. This is his very first movie. Keep an eye out for him and a lot of other big stars in this. This is one of the funniest movies of all time. It's one of John Landis's crowning achievements. I believe it was one of his first movies. But check it out. Animal House. Now, the last movie on this list could not be overlooked. This is one of the most beloved movies of this era. It is still popular to this day. There are still memes, there are still t-shirts, there are still merchandise out for this movie everywhere you look. Of course, I am talking about Grease. This was my wife's, one of her favorite movies. This is from this era. This is probably her favorite movie. She loves this thing. I've got friends that have starred in these plays and know all these songs by heart. Some of the subject matter in this movie would not be appropriate today, but for the time, it was right on cue. And 1978 brought us the wonderful, the legendary movie Grease. Check it out.
Alright, all you funky disco dancing suckers. Hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. We'll pick out another year, we'll do another video. Until then, y'all just keep on keeping on. Yeah. Later, cats.